MEP Andersen, you've been one of the strongest critics of how the European Commission handled the COVID vaccine negotiations, especially the secretive communication between President Ursula von der Leyen and Pfizer CEO. Let's start with the recent EU court ruling. What was your reaction to the EU General Court's ruling on the Pfizer text messages?
Well, first of all, I have to say it was kind of like, well, finally a court is saying what others have been saying for so long. And it wasn't just me, it was numerous colleagues of mine. We've always criticized Ursula von der Leyen in the way she interacted and communicated with the CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla, who happens to be a very close friend of hers. So there was Emily O'Reilly. She is the ombudswoman for European citizens. She is in charge of dealing with complaints that the citizens have and communicating that to the EU Commission. And she has done so in quite strong words, actually. And there was also the EU auditors. They also criticized Ursula von der Leyen, and they both said she had no right to conceal these SMS or refuse to release them. And what the EU Commission ultimately did when asked to release those SMS text exchange between Pfizer and Ursula von der Leyen, they simply took a decision that SMS text messages do not fall under what is considered a public official document. So there is no need, they're not obligated to release it. Well, the court now said, nope, you are actually wrong on this one. It doesn't matter what kind of form a document takes. It can be a digital kind of like exchange, a form, whatever it is, but you have to release it. And they also told her that she was wrong in refusing to release those messages. And they have pretty much told her she has to release those messages. And they annulled the decision of the EU Commission that the SMS messages would not constitute official documents. However, unfortunately, the court left kind of like a loophole by saying you either release those text messages or you have to reach a new decision that is based on regulations. So that's what they pretty much gave her as a loophole, unfortunately. And of course, the EU Commission is going to act on that. I think it was the very same day when the Commission of Transparency, I mean, of all people, it was him, that announced the decision they will not release those text messages. So once again, Ursula von der Leyen is pretty much putting herself above the law, and she is violating the trust of the citizens, and she is not acting in their best interest or on their behalf. I don't know what masters she serves, but it certainly isn't the citizens in the EU member states.
And you have called it a resounding slap in the face for corruption President Ursula von der Leyen. Why such strong words?
Well, because, I mean, we've been on this for years now. If you go back to the COVID special committee we had, a vital aspect of our investigation into all of this was, of course, to find out what happened in those text messages. What were they conversing about? And the only persons that can speak to that is Ursula von der Leyen herself and Albert Bourla. We invited both of them several times to the committee, and they simply denied, did not honor our request for them to show up. So we really had no means to compel them to come to this committee. And as I already mentioned, the EU Auditors Court, they ruled on that not in her favor. The ombudswoman, Emily O'Reilly, slapped her several times, but nothing changed. So they're just kind of shrugging it off and, whatever. So now we finally have a court decision that explicitly states you were in the wrong on this one, and that is actually a slap in the face, and she is so deserving of that. And but I guess we'll find out what happens next. And the other point is, why I use so strong words. This is not the first time she's done that. I mean, when she was a secretary in Germany, first she was with the Secretary of Family Affairs, then it was, I think, employment, and lastly it was defense. She's done it in those positions too. She deleted emails, she deleted SMS back then too. So this seems to be her modus operandi. She always uses methods like that.
Do you believe von der Leyen deliberately tried to hide critical information from the public?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would not put it past her. I mean, just look at it. In the case of Pfizer, we're talking about 35 billion euros. This is the amount we're talking about. And for a product, mind you, that was neither safe nor effective. This product was at best useless, at worst harmful, and in a lot of cases even deadly. And still 35 billion. So I want to know what went on. What were they discussing? What were the conditions? What favors might have been exchanged in that? And on top of all of that, to have the audacity, not only using taxpayers' money to buy that crap, excuse my French, but then to release them from all liability. So if something does go wrong, which it did in a big way, the manufacturers, they're just going, well, sorry this happened. Taxpayer, can you take care of the damage we've done? This is how this works. And it's mind-boggling that it was done that way.
This was the biggest contract in EU history, nearly 1.8 billion doses. Why do you think it was negotiated so secretly?
That's actually a good question that I would really like to know. So I can only speculate on that. The point is this. As we had a hearing in the COVID Special Committee, it was Janine Small. She was the vice president of Pfizer, who showed up instead of Albert Bourla. And she was asked when or did Pfizer conduct a study into whether or not these mRNA injections would prevent transmission and infection. And she readily admitted, no, we never even tested that. We never even tested that. So anyhow, but on that lie, all of the measures, all the restrictions were based on the COVID certificate. I mean, people that refused to take this mRNA injections, they were pretty much outcasts of society. So, but I can only speculate, as I said. Possibly, the EU Commission knew that the mRNA injections were most likely damaging, harmful, but they didn't want to disclose that. So they could not put that in an official document, right? Like write it out. So they needed to have some back channeling conversation, communication going on. So, but the point is this, someone lied. We just don't know who lied. Was it Pfizer telling the commission the truth? Look, our stuff is really worthless, and besides, it might be deadly. And then the commission lied to the people? Or did Pfizer lie to the commission? We don't know that. And that's why I want to see all of the communication going on between the two.
Do you think this case reveals a bigger pattern of secrecy and backroom dealings in the commission?
Absolutely. Yes, it does. So, I mean, again, this was favoring Big Pharma at the expense of the taxpayers, while at the same time blatantly lying, it's only for your own good. This mRNA injection will actually save all of us. That was the narrative. That was the message. It was a lie. Yeah, I think there is a lot of stuff going on that we can't even begin to imagine what is going on.
How has this scandal affected public trust in the EU institutions, especially the Commission?
Well, it's gone down the drain, right? So, and they're kind of realizing that, but of course they do not take a look at what is their part in this. And I keep telling them, I mean, now they're all about, trying to restore trust by censorship. That's how they want to restore trust, right? Well, if the people don't ever hear about the adverse events associated with the mRNA injections, then they will trust us again. And when you tell them, it's like, look, why did people lose trust? Because you lied to them and you were found out. And even when you were found out, you still refuse to acknowledge that you lied to the people. And that is what that's why the people no longer trust neither the EU institutions or mainstream media, for that matter, because they were complicit in those lies. And that's the problem here. But they do not acknowledge their part in it, once again blaming the citizens for being stupid, for being anti-science, scientific, all of this, fake news, all of this is going on. So this blame shifting, but in the end, it will not work because we do have social media now. People can express themselves. And this is, by the way, the reason why it all came out in the first place, because people were reporting on their adverse events, on, oh, I'm feeling so horrible ever since I got this jab, blah, blah, blah. And it's the next step they're taking in this house. I was just in the committee, EUDS, that's short for European Democracy Shield. Yeah, what they're talking about there is more censorship, more content control. What they're actually afraid of is, yeah, they are losing control of the narrative. And they're working tirelessly behind the scenes and in committees like that to make sure that they will regain that control.
Is there a democratic way for citizens to hold these top officials accountable, or is the system rigged to protect them?
Well, see, that's the beauty of democracy, right? You elect someone to represent you, to act on your behalf, to act in your best interest. And if they turn out not to do that, you don't re-elect them. You elect someone else. But it's really not working anymore, is it? I mean, just look at the last German elections. The voters clearly voted for a coalition between Christian Democrats and the AfD. There was a comfortable majority for that. But since Friedrich Merz, the idiot he is, in the campaign already told everyone, look, don't worry, we're not going to even speak to AfD. So, thus indicating and signaling to the Social Democrats, you don't have to worry about anything. You can ask of me whatever you want, and I will have to deliver because you're the only ones I can go into a coalition with. So the people voted for change, but they didn't get change. And this has been going on for years. You take other countries, Romania, for instance, the same thing. So Austria, the same thing. So the problem we're having now is that elections no longer affect change. And if elections no longer affect change, then the system is broken and it needs fixing desperately.
Why do you think most mainstream media outlets in Europe have remained silent or downplayed this case?
Once again, I can really only speculate on that because, I mean, for the life of me, I could not think of a single logical reason for them to do that. The media, the fourth power in a democracy, is supposed to scrutinize governments, to question what they're doing, to question their motives, to uncover corruption. But they're no longer doing that. It seems to me they're like, they're like the biggest supporters of the governments right now. There is no scrutiny anymore, none of that. And that gives citizens, of course, a feeling, and rightly so, I might add, gosh, we're being lied to by everyone. Not just the government, but the press too, because they're in cahoots with them. So yeah, it's really tragic. But this will be the downfall of democracy if there is no accountability anymore, and no one calls these politicians out anymore. You know, plus, when you look at the way the EU institutions, for example, the way they're structured, has nothing to do with democracy. I mean, division of power, you don't have that here, because in the council, that's where the laws are passed. That is comprised of the members of the national executive. So executive here, but legislation there? No, that's not division of power.
Do you think this ruling will set a real precedent, or will the Commission find a way to delay or avoid compliance again?
They will find a way. They will find a way not only to delay, but to avoid it completely. Like I said, the loophole the court unfortunately left was they can just take another decision on that, but they have to base it on regulations, and they will be very, very careful and mindful. And they are probably going to hire a ton of lawyers to make sure that the next decision they take not to release those SMS messages, that will stick.
And moving on to some other topics, Germany is going through turbulent times, politically, socially, and in terms of security. How would you describe the current state of the country?
Catastrophe. Catastrophe. I mean, number one, the German citizen, the German people did not get the government they actually elected. They once again were betrayed. I mean, Friedrich Merz, the number one issue he ran on in the campaign was that he was going to close the border. He said, I will close the border on day one. Well, after the election, not 24 hours after the election, he suddenly said, well, no one ever said anything about closing any borders. So he, you know, it was like, just like that, out the window. The people feel betrayed. And once again, as I already mentioned, when elections do not affect change anymore, then the citizen is pretty much left without recourse. What else can a citizen do, right? So we have that issue. Then, of course, we have the whole issue about the Green Deal and, you know, literally bringing down our industry that we depend on. I mean, Germany doesn't have natural resources. So our industry, that was like the backbone of our economy. And they're just stripping it, right? The next issue you have, about this illegal invasion, you have to call it, really. I'm talking about migration, that's what they call it. It is an illegal invasion at this point. The sheer numbers and how they just get to our country, right? There is no vetting, there is no scrutiny. Who is that? I mean, we don't even know who these people are, to be quite frank. So, and we see the effects on our society just in the past couple of days. Random knife attacks, and these random start with a group rapes, these gang rapes. They're occurring twice every day. I mean, can you imagine? It is insane. Twice, and that is not counting the rapes that occur with only one perpetrator. Random knife attacks. We're no longer talking on an on daily basis. They're occurring on an hourly basis. Everywhere in Germany, you are no longer safe wherever you go. So yeah, our country is no longer safe. The police is advising women now, well, if you want to go for a run, you might do it in pairs. I mean, seriously? We're discussing to have separate carriages on trains for women so they can be safe. What we're actually doing in our country, and not only in Germany, but pretty much in all of the EU, with the exception of the Eastern European countries. That's a little different there. But what we're in essence doing is we're establishing the lived gender apartheid of the countries these illegal invaders come from. That's what we're doing. Gender apartheid. That has nothing to do with a liberal, open, pluralistic society if you have to lock up the women so that they are safe.
In a recent election, the AfD made historic gains. What do you think explains this growing support among German voters?
Oh, that's very simple to answer. Everything we've been saying from day one, from 2013, every single thing we have been saying turned out to be true. And the people are realizing that now. It wasn't fake news. We weren't fear-mongering. We weren't making up stuff out of thin air. Everything we were saying, the people are seeing now, they were right. And they're fed up. They're so fed up, I can't even put it in words. They're done. And that's why we are rising in the polls. And after the last election, despite the fact that the Christian Democrats came in at first place, they had the most votes, it's gone. We are now the strongest party in the polls. So stick with the truth and you will win in the end. And that's what we did.